Hi there. You're listening to Hypercast, an ADHD podcast. I'm Melissa, an ADHD coach and advocate.
Hi, I'm Brianna, an ADHD coach and soon-to-be therapist. We are here to explore all things ADHD, from unexpected challenges to unique strengths.
Join us as we share insights and strategies that empower you to live your best ADHD life.
Ready? Let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to Hypercast.
Welcome to Hypercast. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about ADHD nutrition. It's a topic that I feel there is a lot of mystery and misinformation about, but we are really lucky.
We have the most amazing guest on our show today. Like, truly, we were chatting a little bit before and we are just nerding out about all of the ADHD and food stuff. Welcome to Annika Angelo. Very excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's going to be such a fun time talking about science and nutrition and ADHD, basically my three favorite passions.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Annika.
I am a Midwest native. I love the Midwest. A lot of just great things are happening here. And one of the great things is there's a lot of research on ADHD. I ended up getting my master's in health psychology. And in there, I was learning about behavioral nutrition. And that is where I decided to concentrate my expertise into behavioral nutrition / NeuroNutrition. NeuroNutrition is an emerging field where it marries three different fields at once: psychology, neurobiology, and nutrition. The brain, like the actual workings of the brain, then our perception of those workings of the brain, and then also nutrition and how that impacts all of that. And now I'm just communicating about the science that I've learned and continue to learn.
It may not be uncommon for us with ADHD to have problems around food.
Yeah. So there's at least three different types of eating behaviors that I'd see with people with ADHD. The main ones is actually binging, so overeating, or eating for stimulation. So that is where actually the majority of people with ADHD experience. I don't know if there's any research on it, but I feel like people who are more combined or more hyperactive tend to fall more into this avenue of eating. The second one is forgetting to eat throughout your day and then binging later on. That is also a very classic experience, mainly because eating is hard with ADHD. And then when we restrict throughout our day, we tend to overeat at night. So that is the second one that I tend to see. And then the third one is basically you just have a really hard time with eating. And even if you get throughout the end of your day, you still don't really feel like eating. And so you just end up undernourishing yourself. Mm-hmm. So those are the three main areas. And I also have a theory that people more inattentive tend to experience that last one.
But one of the things that comes up a lot is, what do I eat? Because like you're saying, if you are troubled in areas of eating, whether it's binging or forgetting, and then all of a sudden you're shaky and you're also struggling with executive function, just to get food in your mouth is hard. But what should we be eating as people with ADHD?
I think that's exactly where we want to learn, what is our body asking us? That's the first question. Because it's one thing to get the basics down of ADHD eating, but it's another to understand when to be eating these things. So like you said, say you haven't been eating, now you're feeling super shaky. You feel like your brain fog is kind of crazy right now. The best thing to do here is actually eat sugar. That's going to be the one thing that's going to improve your executive functioning so that you can create a meal. And it also helps bring your blood sugar back to a little bit of a homeostasis for a little bit while you make some food that's going to help you. The other thing is timing of your food. That's the hardest thing for me, and I study this, right? I talk about this every single day on social media platforms, and I still have trouble with it. Making sure that I'm actually eating 3 meals a day, ideally with snacks. That is the gold standard for ADHD nutrition. Scheduling your eating times. Make sure you are eating breakfast. Make sure you are eating lunch and dinner. Ideally some snacks in there.
Yeah.
So the reason for this, because, with ADHD, we need reasons for why to do this. Otherwise, we're no.
Thank you so much for understanding that. Okay, keep going with your reason.
The reason is our brain doesn't process glucose as effectively as the neurotypical population. Basically, what this means is that there was a study way back in 1998 that looked at people with ADHD and their glucose metabolism in their brain. they found that the people with ADHD had an 8% worse metabolism of the glucose, which essentially means that the brain wasn't using the glucose effectively, slash, like, it was maybe there, but the brain just wasn't using it in the way it needed to. So when we see something like that, one of the only things that we can do besides medication is nutritional interventions. And also like exercising. That's the other important one, right? Yep. So the nutritional intervention for that is consistent eating. If the brain isn't using it, we need to make sure that we're giving it enough juice to use.
You're saying sugar. I know for myself, I often feel better after eating a piece of fruit than eating a cookie. Is there a difference in what we're putting into our bodies? Like, I mean, even if we're using it as a primer, so we can get our brain functioning or get our body moving just to be able to make that meal.
You're right. There are better forms of sugar for us. Like at the core, carbohydrates are sugar, right? We have 3 different types of carbohydrates. We have starches, sugars, and then also fibrous carbs. So fibrous carbs, especially the fruit ones, because they also have a higher sugar content, they're probably like our better options because the fiber helps slow down blood glucose response so that we can actually, like, hopefully have more of a stable response when we're trying to make that extra food to improve our executive functioning. If you're like feeling extreme and you really need that blood sugar to go up, fruit is a great option, especially the fruits that are more easily absorbed. So like juice fruits that have a lot more like juice in it because that like goes faster essentially.
My husband's a type 1 diabetic, so we often keep like glucose packs around and nut butters with sugar in them. And of course, like fruit juices or sometimes even juice boxes, because those are really great quick hits of
yeah, exactly.
sugar.
And it's also a more health promoting type of sugar because it is giving you a ton of polyphenols, lots of antioxidants, lots of vitamins. So you're doing good things for your body. Also, there's a lot of fruits that have actually been associated with improving insulin sensitivity over time.
I was reading through your online bio, and one of the things you kind of talked about restrictive diets, and I appreciated you doing that because I have a personal belief that diets aren't good for you. That lifestyle changes are, but going on a diet, restricting carbs, restricting different things in your diet, there's no way that long term any of that could be good for you.
Oh, no, definitely not, especially for anyone with a mental health condition. So what we see is having a mental health condition or having even a predisposition to a mental health condition increases your likelihood for an eating disorder. And that means if you have ADHD, we want to be super mindful of not getting into disordered eating habits. And that means restrictive eating patterns. It's kind of complicated because a lot of people with ADHD feel like if they don't take away the foods from themselves, they can't control themselves. So for it, that's where working with a dietitian is super important. Specifically like an eating disorder dietitian who knows ADHD.
Yeah, that combination is super important because like it's the all or nothing thinking, right? Of like, I can either have all of this or none of this. And then that restriction leads to further problems. There was a case I heard of where a woman had ADHD, so autism and ADHD, and anorexia. And they went to a dietitian who just tried to treat the anorexia. And they're like, oh, like try cottage cheese. And like, no, I have textural issues. Like, I'm not going to eat the cottage cheese. Or like, try this, eat this. You need to be eating these foods. And then that triggered the like PDA, the pathological demand avoidance. And they're like, well, now I'm not going to eat it because someone told me to eat it. And so they had no understanding of how to actually get this person to eat the food. And the eating disorder occurred as a result of this highly restricted food diet and people telling them what to eat. So having a combination of understanding and knowledge about nutrition is super important.
Yeah, it's such a key. And then like also having a person who understands why even is medication important for some of that. Because if you have a provider who is like saying you can do all of this, but like lifestyle interventions is like the best thing to do, and ignoring how medication can actually allow you to do those functions.
I know that a lot of ADHD medications are actually appetite suppressants. Could you talk a bit about that?
Definitely a big reason, I'd say, for a lot of people who end up binging at night, just more so that they don't realize that their ADHD medication is an appetite suppressant. And so they go throughout their day thinking, oh, I don't need to eat. I'm not hungry. I have enough energy. And they just continue to go throughout their day. And then at night, they're like, oh my gosh, this has worn off. I'm now currently realizing that my body is in a state of excessive hunger.
Mhm.
And then they treat that then instead of treating it throughout the day when we actually needed it. It's sort of like caffeine, we can have caffeine that is also an appetite suppressant and think that we don't need breakfast. But then it doesn't actually help our functioning. When we look at studies with eating breakfast with caffeine versus only caffeine for breakfast, we see decreases in performance. That is why eating your breakfast is still important, even if you feel like you don't need to.
Exactly. So that leads into Melissa's question, which, like, I know that protein is very, very important for ADHD brains, everyone's brain, but specifically
Yeah.
for the executive function and the pieces that we struggle with. Is there anything that we can consume, either vitamins or food? I know some people can't eat all the things. There are supplements available that could counteract some of that RFID, that like avoidant or restrictive food intake, or some of that delayed eating type of thing, just to eat throughout the day, that even if you don't want to.
I feel like the most important thing is intuitive eating, but also not at the same time.
You said the buzzword. You said the buzzword. For those of the listeners who don't know what intuitive eating is, could you briefly explain it?
Intuitive eating is the act of listening to your body and understanding what is it asking me and honoring those cravings while at the same time understanding if those cravings are good, like the cravings that you actually want to honor or not.
And for people with ADHD who have low proprioception and might not know what their body is
Right.
needing or feeling, like, how does that work?
Yeah. And like that's where the honoring your body, but also treating it like a toddler. Like the best example would be, say you know you need to eat, but your intuitive eating thing is saying, if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. But then you're like, wait, I've not eaten for 12 hours. It doesn't matter if I'm not hungry. Honoring my body means eating now.
Okay.
And honoring your body even more is eating 3 times a day, even if you don't really feel like it, even if it's just a small amount of food. Because at the end of the day, it is going to improve our executive functioning because we exist with food.
I have a strong belief in something I call ACS. Always carry snacks. Just like a toddler, like you keep snacks in your purse for a toddler, I keep snacks in my purse for myself. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how often are you out and about and you lose track of time and then you get like slight signs for, especially if you're on medication, if you get slight signs of hunger, it usually means that you're way past the point of hunger.
Yes, that
Yeah.
is exactly the other thing. Like learning how to understand your body's signals is so hard with ADHD, especially for those who tend to be more on like that ADHD side.
Mhm.
For some reason, or the inattentive ADHD that is also more pronounced for some reason, because more likely we're just in our heads more. Figuring out when you are feeling hungry, that doesn't mean you're hungry. That means you're starving.
Yeah.
So what are those other cues that you can learn? And honestly, for myself, I have none. My cue is that I have to eat between 8 and 9 a.m., between 11 and 2 p.m., and between 5 and 8 p.m. Because if I don't, I will get hungry.
We talked a little bit about like the importance of protein, but what does that look like? Like we can talk about numbers, we can talk about, scientifically what it should be, but for someone who doesn't know, what does a high protein meal that will support the ADHD brain look like first thing in the morning?
So for me personally, I swap out a few different types of protein breakfast. My 2 options are an egg type of morning breakfast thing and then a smoothie type. So I find both of those really helpful. So I make an egg bake and it lasts me the whole week because then I can just like cut it into little servings, throw it in the microwave. I protein in the morning. That is super great because you can also add a lot of vegetables, a lot of all of those other things that are good for us. Resistant starches through hash browns. Those are really good. And then the other one, like I said, was a smoothie. I rotate a few different smoothies. Usually it is either a fruit-based smoothie or a chocolate peanut butter-based smoothie. But either way, they both have a lot of Greek yogurt because that has a lot of good protein. And I don't like Greek yogurt other ways. I think it tastes gross. But in smoothies, I tolerate it.
It's really honest. I like that one way, but no other way.
The Canadian hack to this is to add maple syrup.
Okay, that's valid. I also add maple syrup to all of my smoothies because it just tastes amazing.
It's
But it has
better
to be
than
like
nothing.
the real maple syrup.
Yes.
Hey, yes, as a Canadian, I highly advocate real maple syrup and not freaking corn syrup.
In my world, there is a fifth food group. It is called the mobile food group. Anything I can keep in one hand and continue doing with the other is always a boon. I like to keep things like jerky on, like in my pantry that I can grab and take with me. And
Banana,
yes, goes in my purse.
pepperoni sticks, little Baby Bell cheeses or Balderson's cheeses you can get at Costco. But we were speaking about toddlers earlier. They have like applesauce pouches
With,
with
like,
the
little yogurts, but-
resealable lid. Oh, speaking of the yogurt tubes, I only eat those frozen, like Freezy Pops.
It's though a way for you to get some protein in your day.
Exactly.
I'm a vegan, so talk about vegetable proteins, but I like to eat things that are like dinner or lunch like for breakfast. So
How very German of you.
I know, thank you. I like anything lentil based, and I can eat that any time of day.
You sound like my mother-in-law. I love that. Also, a side note, you were talking about toddlers, and then you were talking about like those like little finger foods. That is the second thing to make sure that we deal with ADHD. Treating ourselves like toddlers. What do toddlers like to eat? They like to eat finger foods. It's one of the best things we can do if we have ADHD because it lets us actually finish eating our plate. Because it's like less overwhelming than like a huge meal, right?
Yeah.
Like you can be like, oh, okay, it's like little things. I can just eat them. That's okay.
That is one of my favorite things to do when I'm feeling like very overstimulated or I have to like work on something, just to have food near me that I can eat at like grazing type of behavior. I'll have like carrots or hummus. Yeah, like just having like a little snack plate next to me while I'm working on something. Because sometimes I'm hyper focused and I don't want to stop. I do not want to stop and make time for lunch. And so just having the snacks on hand is so helpful.
When I'm getting ready to work, I surround myself in snacks and like a bottle of smoothie juice and 3 bottles of water. I do a lot of weightlifting, and was really like complicated because that meant eating more often, eating more protein. I felt like my eating was already good, but when you get busy and you need to have certain nutrients in your body, the ADHD made it harder. Taking meds that made me feel like I didn't need to eat was even harder. But I would know by like noon that my body was totally wigging out because I just want to fall asleep and a pile of exhaustion. One of the things we really struggle with already is exercising. Regulated exercise isn't something we're good at keeping with. And if we feel exhausted and not energized and getting the benefits from exercise, then what's the point of continuing?
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of think about how, even for myself, like I now finally, after years, have somewhat of an exercise routine.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I mean, having that external motivation is such a key, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But there's definitely days where I feel exhausted already. But then you think about what is actually happening when we exercise. What's actually happening is our neuroplasticity is improving. Our ability to focus better, create new pathways in our brain, learn and have a better working memory improves with exercise. It also improves the metabolism of different nutrients in our body. So we want to make sure that we're nourishing ourselves throughout the day before we do it. So like fuel to do the exercise instead of exercise and then, I don't know, feel like you don't eat after. Because for me personally, after I exercise, I don't feel hungry. So eating before exercise is such an important thing. I don't know if that translates to all y'all, but
The thing is, sometimes like after exercise, it's good to make sure you have protein if you've done a really, really hard workout, and carbohydrates as well. You can actually lose glucose stores if you've exercised a lot. That's the kind of thing that just makes you feel dead. There is an exercise high. There is extended attention because of the good hormones, the good chemicals raising in your brain.
Yeah, we love endorphins.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, those are such good things for us.
I grew up playing soccer, and so the stereotypical soccer moms bringing orange slices or watermelon slices. So when I exercise, I normally have snacks on hand because that was the pattern built in childhood. Even though I'm not hungry, there are snacks, and I want the snacks because everyone else is having the snacks. And so whenever I go to the gym, like I have like a bag of nuts or an apple for afterwards. The snacking in association with sports has come very naturally to me because I grew up with it.
If you don't drink water, if you don't eat the right foods, how is your body supposed to thrive? How's your brain supposed to thrive? How are you supposed to even think?
You know, when we do like trauma work, we want to make sure that we are learning how to feel safe in our environment, like our brain. But we also need to learn how to make our body feel safe, because when our body doesn't feel safe, then how are we supposed to feel any better? And that's the same thing for ADHD. Like food, sleep, hydration, exercise, all of those things are the ways that our body knows we are safe.
You've done it again. You've said the buzzwords again. So like essentially the body keeps score type of thing. And so we can't be our best selves if we are not creating a safe environment for us. There is a huge link between ADHD, autism, and trauma, because either we're more vulnerable and we are experiencing trauma at a higher rate, or simply the existing as a different person in this world is traumatizing. If you're not creating that safety for yourself, how can you expect your brain to be functioning at its best?
Yeah.
Can we talk about supplements? What other supplements could we be taking? Obviously, I'm not going to say should, because you need to talk to either your doctor or a dietitian or a nutritionist before you start taking random vitamins. But what could you ask your doctor about?
Yeah. So there are a lot of studies out there, and almost every single study finds that supplementation doesn't work unless you have a deficiency. Unfortunately, a lot of people are saying, hey, you should buy my supplement. A lot of ones out there specifically are magnesium, that people say helps ADHD. And then also people talk about their omega-3 supplements. Those ones are super typical that we see in the online space to help your ADHD. However, when we look at the studies, they won't, unless you've tested and you have a deficiency. So that is the first step that we always want to do. There are a few nutrients that are great to test to see if you have a deficiency, because they might actually help your ADHD. There's quite a few of them, going to be honest, but the top ones that I would personally say to test for: magnesium. That is probably one of the best ones. We want to make sure that we are doing a red blood cell test and not the serum test. The reason for this is that the red blood cell test actually shows you if you have a real deficiency, whereas the serum test doesn't necessarily show that. It might also be called the ERC magnesium test. It kind of depends on like your location. But your physician should know what you're talking about. Some people do improve their symptoms with an iron supplementation if they are severely deficient. So we also want to test for iron, but also ferritin.
If you own a uterus and regularly bleed, perhaps that is another thing that you could go, like, if we're recommending things like all people go, or all ADHDers go get your magnesium checked. And if you are a uterus owner, then possibly get your iron checked.
Yeah, so that would be a second one. A third one would be your omega-3s. But homocysteine levels, they are typically elevated in people with ADHD. The likely reason here is we just don't tend to eat a lot of B vitamins, because B vitamins are in foods we tend not to eat a lot of. So, plants. Actually, one of the best ones is potatoes. So that is a win for potatoes, specifically like white potatoes. There are other ones too. Seeds tend to be higher in vitamin Bs. Do we eat a lot of seeds? No.
We should.
We should. That is one of the 5 like areas that we want to focus on with ADHD.
I know a lot of ADHDers or autistic people who like take the seeds off because they don't like them getting stuck in their teeth or the texture.
Oh, it is hard. It really is. Like learning how to at least like try to find the ones that work for you. So like flaxseed, that's a great just seed because you can grind it up.
You can like sprinkle it on stuff.
Yeah, you can also use it to cook, which is fun. I use it to make granola, actually. Instead of like an egg to make the granola, I use a lot of flax instead, like ground flax. Huge fan. Nutritional yeast. That's a great source. Throw it in with your mashed potatoes. It makes them a little cheesy.
There's this lovely product called Bragg's amino acids.
Oh my gosh, I was raised off of that.
It's like this salty, almost soy sauce like a liquid that has amino acids in it that you can spray on all of your food, and it makes it better tasting, especially if you have ADHD and don't have time to cook. It adds flavor to something that may have zero flavor.
But yes, those are great options. And then actually cereal, fortified cereals, fortified. Really anything fortified is good for us.
And
That's why
Annika is not talking about Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Captain Crunch or any of the sugary cereals.
yes,
disturbing.
technically a lot of those ones tend not to have a lot of fortification. I know that a lot of people tend to be afraid of fortification. That is something we don't need to be afraid of, honestly speaking, because it's actually what's helping us stay healthy.
It's great to have all this information, right? But where do you start? Because it's great to have the information, but sometimes just knowing where your starting point is, that is the hardest thing.
Yeah. I mean, we just have to look at our life and be realistic about it. Let's just give myself as an example, right? So realistically, Annika, 2 years ago, basically didn't eat anything. If I did eat something, it was chicken tenders, French fries, things like that, frozen meals all the time, if I ate, right? And so that was my baseline. If I wanted to go from that to where I'm at right now immediately, that would have been impossible. I would have set myself up for failure. So the first step, if you're at that point where I was, is just to learn what is the balanced plate for ADHD. So the balanced plate for ADHD is, the easiest way I can say it is half of your plate, make it look like it has protein in it. And then on that second half, 2/3 of that second half, have that as some sort of fibrous carbohydrate. So let's talk about fruit, vegetables, add some maybe seeds or nuts. And then the last half, or the last third of the half, it's hard without a visual. Hopefully people understand what I'm saying. That last part, just joy. What is going to make you feel happy?
I like that a lot.
That is so important because I'm not going to drink bottles of fish oil. I'm not going to eat cottage cheese. I'm not going to completely remove everything in my life and only have flax seeds and chia seeds and I'm not a bird, right? So if I'm
Yeah.
not getting enjoyment out of my food, I'm not going to be eating it.
That's the key. We want to make sure that we want to eat the food, because if we don't want to eat it, then we're not going to eat it.
The documentary I was watching, and the nutrition person was saying, make a list of your top 10 favorite foods that are nutritious. Buy those 10 foods and mix and match them in your meals. Your nutrition will increase because you're more apt to eat the foods that you like to eat instead of forcing yourself to eat the trendy food or the food that you should be eating.
Yeah, because we have to make sure that we're actually wanting to eat our food. And also, we do want to make sure we're eating some starchy foods. Starchy foods are, alongside fiber, the types of foods that our gut really likes, especially resistant types of starches. Resistant starches are the starches that we get when we cool down some of those starchy carbohydrates. So if you eat potatoes, if you made some French fries, let them cool down a little bit before you eat them. Or even better, get them frozen first, then cook them, and you already have additional resistant starch. Or if you make rice, white rice is totally fine. That's great. Take that, put it in the freezer for a little bit, then have a ton of rice on hand in portions. That's already a great idea. And then you can throw them in the microwave and you already have more resistant starch. Happier for your gut bugs.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's the core. We want to make sure we understand what is an actual balanced plate and what are actually good portions for us. That's where working with a dietitian is super important, because they already know this and they can help you go on that track a little bit better.
We can get foods that are easy to prepare, foods that aren't as processed, but you can still make them quickly. Things that you can get from the grocery store that may take you 10 minutes and it's still whole grains, good for you, that you could mix and match. I was on a journey for several months to find foods that I could make quickly that didn't make my body feel bad. I found Whole Foods makes these bagged things that are whole grains mixed with lentils. They're kind of the base for a grain bowl. And then if I have quick making spinach or some tomatoes or peppers or zucchini, quick vegetables, I can have a meal in under 10 minutes. That makes a big difference when I need a big injection of nutrition and protein.
Creating some pantry staples that are easily accessible, but still promoting what you want to promote for your ADHD. Personally, I do have a lot of those types of food too. I get a lot of bagged rice that is the 90-second microwave rice. Seriously, that is so helpful. Aldi, I love Aldi so much. They have quinoa versions, they have whole grain versions, they have multiple different types. That's like a great base that we can use. It has a lot of good fiber. It has a lot of good starch. Another thing I keep in my pantry is canned meats. Specifically, I keep canned tuna, canned chicken, and then also canned salmon in my pantry at all times. So I can just like grab a can of tuna whenever I'm feeling like I can't make anything, pair it with some frozen peas, some Greek yogurt, some lime, some other spices if I have. Depends on what I have. And that's a really quick meal. Another one that I have is those types of freezer meals that you can add vegetables and fruits to. Trader Joe's. I love Trader Joe's. But specifically, their gnocchi is really good.
Oh, my husband loves their gnocchi.
Yes, it's so good. However, it's just carbohydrate, right? Pretty much just carbohydrate. But it's really easy to add things to it. We will add some chopped kale into there. We will add some frozen pre-cooked chicken, chopped up chicken. That's actually a great resource. Ones you can like microwave for 90 seconds. Then the microwave is like our best friend, or just throw it in the pan like with the gnocchi. And then also we can throw in some chopped veggies in there too, or a spritz of lime, some cilantro. You can get creative.
Absolutely.
Those are like some of like the base things that I have. And then I always have Greek yogurt on hand.
I keep organic frozen vegetables in the freezer because it's nice to have fresh, but at the same time, how often do I just let them sit there, then they rot, and then I go to the refrigerator and I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of like one pot meals. Make something in the Instant Pot or the pressure cooker and make a huge batch of chili or curry. If you put all your vegetables, all your protein, all your flavor into one dish, and then you don't have to get this and a side dish and this and this and pull out a million things from your fridge because you just have one pre-portioned bag that you pull out of the freezer, put in the microwave, and you're done. That is the most beautiful thing.
I like that. That kind of reminds me of what I call the 4 S's. And the 4 S's are the best ways to make sure that you get all the fruits and vegetables that we should get. So sandwiches, that's one. Stir fries, the second. Soup. And then what was the last one? Oh, salad. Because you can just add so many things to them. And it's one meal. So it
It makes
doesn't
it
feel
interesting.
overwhelming. And you can change it all the time. You're not constrained.
I have this little cookbook that you can write your favorite recipes in, and we have like 2 pages of quick aiolis that you can make. Mayonnaise, a little bit of salt, curry powder, or paprika, in a combination of things. It just makes it interesting. If I put it on something or pair it with some vegetables, it gives it flavor without having to make a massive meal or labor for a long time.
Sauces are clutch. I make this green sauce sometimes. It has jalapeno pepper, lots of lime, lots of cilantro, white beans to give it some protein.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. What else does it have? Spinach.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it makes an amazing sauce.
As a person just entering adulthood, I am slowly entering the world of sauces and nuts and seeds. I saw the funniest like Instagram reel. Oh yeah, I just turned 30 and now all of a sudden my pantry is filled with nuts and seeds. I was like, oh, that all checks out. They're so good for you. They have all the right kinds of fats and everything that you could possibly need.
Trader Joe's has a great selection of seeds and nuts, but also Costco has a great selection of seeds. If you keep them in your freezer, they keep for a while. I have a bag of pine nuts. I just feel like it's always there for me when I need them.
So basically our number one tip for ADHDers is to get a chest freezer or like an additional storage freezer.
But also put a list of what you have in there.
Yeah. Annika, do you have any like just last awesome tips that would help our audience when it comes to food and nutrition?
Really going back to that plate. Right. Let's bring it back to there. That's our first step. Understanding what is the balanced plate for ADHD. The second step is learning how to incorporate those foods. So I try to make it like a game. How many different fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, plants in general? So the herbs, the grains, anything that grows from the ground, including, you know what? Coffee, that's a plant. Cocoa powder, that's a plant. It's really fun figuring out how many different plants can we get into our day. Make it a game. So for me, I make these protein balls and they have so many different plants in it. So it has chocolate because I love chocolate. But it has pumpkin seeds, it has chia seeds, it has flax seeds, it has soy milk, so that's another plant. And it also has peanut butter, so peanuts, that's another plant. Honey, that's not a plant, so I guess I can't count that. Maple syrup, yeah, we could debate that's a plant.
Trees are plants.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can debate. Oh, so that's like 7 plants. Like, that's, oh, also oats. So that's 8 plants right
Appropriate.
there. If our goal is to get 30 different plants in our week, we're already almost 1/3 of the way there just by one protein ball. You know?
That sounds
So,
awesome for someone who has issues with peanuts. I will switch out for sunflower seed butter or for
yeah.
cashew butter because I can eat tree nuts. Just do a 1-to-1 match and it usually works out well.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it usually does.
Mhm.
What types of vegetables can I add to this dish? Make it fun, make it interesting. And that's going to help you down the road. So making it kind of like a game. And then also following the general guidelines for what is something we really want to aim for. Aim for at least 1 fruit a day, 1 vegetable a day. If you like fruit, that's okay. Just do 2 fruits instead of a vegetable. I know vegetables are really hard for people. But at the end of the day, fruits have basically a lot of the same types of nutrients. It's ideal if we're eating vegetables as well, but it's okay just to start off with fruit. And then if you're doing like 1 fruit, 1 vegetable, try your best to also add in at least 1 seed or nut. If you can do that, like, you got it. So like that's the base. The third goal would be to eat a fatty fish every week if you're not vegan, because that has our EPA and DHA omega-3s, which are the ones that actually improve our brain. So super important. Adding a fatty fish a week, adding in a bean every week. You can hide it like what I did with my sauce. Figure out ways to hide it if you don't like it. And then potentially add, instead of just 1 vegetable a day, try adding 2 vegetables a day. And then do the same with your fruit too. And then your seeds. Try to do at least 1 type of seed. And then continue building on there until you just have it as a habit.
I really appreciate your take on nutrition because it seems kind and compassionate and adaptive to the person. So many diets, they're restrictive. There's only one way you can do things. It's not about how the person can do things in their lives in a way that works for them. So thank you for showing us a way that this can be kind and compassionate and exciting, and we can gamify it a little bit too.
Oh yeah, it's super fun. I will admit it gets boring after a little bit. Prep yourself for that, but hopefully by then it'll be closer to a habit. And give yourself grace for when the habit stops being a habit. Know that you're not going to be able to do this forever. I fall off a lot. Like, seriously, so much. And I know all of this. So, of course, if I'm doing this, what are the odds everybody else is?
Brianna and I often talk about that, like, yeah, we are ADHD experts, but you know what happens? We live with ADHD. So we still have struggles. It's not like it goes away.
Knowledge only gets you so far. And then
I-
reality hit.
I wish education could solve all my problems because then I'd have 0 problems. And we'd all have PhDs.
Thank you so much, Annika, for being with us today. We really appreciate it. It's been a nice, relaxing, fun talk about nutrition because I feel like this topic can be very heady or very boring or very scary for some people because there's a lot of emotion attached to food.
Oh, yeah. So much emotion. And
Yeah.
learning how to integrate that emotion into our food is important.
We talked a lot about nutrition today, specifically related to ADHD. We busted some myths, i.e., taking supplements isn't going to help you unless you need the supplements. So talk to your doctor about that. But basically, just intuitive eating is the takeaway. Learning how to notice in your body what you need when you're hungry, your hunger cues, and then finding foods that fulfill those needs, as Annika said towards the end, finding a balance between those foods and just trying to add one thing in at a time, gamify it if you can. But the best thing about nutrition is that eating is one thing that we have control over when it comes to our ADHD, and taking that power can vastly improve your life and how your brain functions.
And remember to keep things that you can eat in your freezer, in your pantry, in your purse. Annika, where can we find you?
I do with my education online. So the main platform that I use is Instagram. My secondary is YouTube. And you can find them both under the platform NutriMind Coach. So NutriMind Coach.
Great. If you need any further ADHD services, you can find me at likemindcoaching.com.
And you can find me at understandingadhd.ca.
Thank you so much, everyone. Till next time. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Hypercast.
If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, be sure to rate and subscribe. And check out the show notes for links to our social media and websites.
Whether you're seeking practical tips, heartfelt stories, or just a sense of community, Hypercast is here for you.
Remember, you're not alone in your ADHD journey. Together, we can navigate the highs and lows with courage and compassion.
So until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing your unique neurodiversity.
Catch you on the next episode of Hypercast.